Early morning light slipped through the cabin windows, soft and pale, the kind that made everything feel slow and half awake. Passengers settled into their seats, scrolling through phones, rubbing tired eyes, waiting for the flight to take off. Flight attendants moved up and down the aisle, checking overhead bins and offering polite smiles. Then a whisper spread from row to row. Someone up front mentioned that the captain had announced radio issues. Most people shrugged it off. A few joked about it. The tone in the cabin stayed casual, but Riley Hart paused in the middle of lifting her cold coffee. Something in the captain's voice, barely noticeable to anyone else, made her freeze. She listened again. A faint tremor. A strain he tried to hide. A low hum outside the aircraft drifted into her awareness, steady at first, then shifting. Riley slowly turned toward the window. 2 gray F-16s were sliding into position alongside the plane, close enough to catch the sunlight on their wings. They moved with absolute precision. Too close. Too quiet. One of them dipped a wing in a way only trained pilots would understand. Passengers around her murmured that it must be some routine escort. Riley knew better. That dip was a distress call. The young man sitting next to her gave a shaky laugh, saying these things always looked scarier than they were. Riley didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on the formation outside, calm and focused, the way someone watches a storm rolling in. Inside her silence was a life no one here knew she once lived. The hum outside deepened. Static cracked over the intercom, sharp enough to make a few passengers jump. A voice broke through, young, strained, panicked. Eagle flight, low fuel, losing control. Riley's hand tightened around her cup. Everything she thought she had left behind was suddenly right above them. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Military and Veteran Stories so you never miss these true tales of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Riley Hart sat quietly in seat 8, blending into the restless shuffle of passengers settling in around her. At 36, she looked like any other traveler heading somewhere she didn't really want to go. Her gray hoodie was plain, her jeans worn, and her backpack tucked neatly under the seat carried nothing unusual, at least nothing anyone would notice. Inside it, wrapped in an old cotton cloth, rested a single dog tag with golden wings scratched and faded from years of use. She hadn't touched it yet. She didn't want to. 5 years earlier, her name had been taken off every roster, wiped from briefings, and listed as deceased in service after an aviation incident no one was allowed to talk about. Captain Riley Hart had been a top Army Air Combat Test pilot, the lead instructor of a classified Joint Forces aerial program, someone trusted with machines and missions most people would never hear about. Now she lived quietly, renting a small place under a new name, working odd jobs, doing everything she could to stay unseen. She avoided anything that reminded her of what she once was. But even in a hoodie and sitting in economy class, she couldn't escape old habits. A businessman squeezed past her to reach the aisle, rolling his eyes when Riley stepped aside, too calmly, too smoothly. He muttered something about people who can't get settled. She let it go. She always let it go. A flight attendant approached her earlier, noticing how Riley kept glancing at the window and the overhead speakers. The attendant had spoken gently, the way people do when they think someone is a nervous flyer. Riley thanked her and nodded, not bothering to explain that she wasn't afraid. She was assessing the rhythm of the engines, listening for inconsistencies in the airflow, and tracking the faint pressure shifts in the cabin. Then a teenage boy across the aisle snickered to his friend after spotting Riley's plain clothes. "Bet she's never flown anything faster than a lawnmower." Riley pretended not to hear, though a small smile tugged at her face. If only he knew. She rested her hands on her knees, breathing slowly. That breath was too steady for someone ordinary. Her posture too balanced, her eyes too sharp. Every small change in vibration along the fuselage registered in her without her even thinking about it. Her mind counted engine cycles, a reflex she couldn't shake. She could tell the left engine was running smoother than the right long before anyone else felt it. Outside, the 2 F-16s held tight to the aircraft. Riley recognized the pilots' flying styles from the way they adjusted their nose angles in the wind. Lieutenant Jake Mercer, call sign Falcon 2, always nudged his throttle half a second early when nervous. Lieutenant Ryan Cole Falcon 3 had a habit of easing left when he meant to go straight. She had drilled both traits out of them years ago, but old habits tended to come back in moments of stress. She had flown alongside both men once, trained them, pushed them, watched them grow into skilled pilots. They had no idea she was on this plane or that she was even alive. To them, Eagle One had died in that classified crash 5 years back and been buried with honors no one saw. Inside the cockpit, the civilian captain and his co-pilot were struggling. They didn't understand why military jets were suddenly flanking them. Their updates over the intercom were polite but nervous, each announcement carrying more tension than the last. Riley could almost picture them exchanging worried glances behind the closed door. Meanwhile, the passengers tried to keep things light. Some joked about free air shows. Others whispered that these escorts never meant anything serious. But their smiles were thin, and their eyes kept drifting toward the windows. Riley felt the tension settling across the cabin like a weight. Something was off. This wasn't simple escort protocol. The spacing was too tight. The maneuvers were too subtle. And the tone in Falcon 2's voice earlier, the static, the strain that wasn't routine. A storm was building in the sky, and Riley felt it before anyone else. She had spent years trying to disappear, to bury the name Eagle One and the world that came with it. But the hum in the metal, the rhythm of the engines, the nervous shifts in the escort formation, every part of it tugged at the instincts she had spent half her life sharpening. And now those instincts were waking up again. The voices on the intercom were never meant to reach the cabin, but they did. At first, it was only a faint hiss of static under the captain's calm announcements, a background noise most people ignored. Then, as the minutes passed, the static sharpened into something else. A strained voice, clipped and young, cut through the hum of the engines. Fuel low, controls stiff, can't hold formation. The words came in pieces, broken by interference, but the fear in them was clear. A few passengers glanced up from their screens. One older man in the aisle seat near Riley crossed himself without thinking. Someone further back asked out loud, "Did you hear that?" The intercom clicked off. Silence followed, too quick and too clean to feel natural. 2 flight attendants met eyes in the galley, their polite smiles gone for a moment. They whispered, hushed and tense, before one of them straightened up and forced a calm expression back onto her face. Riley had heard enough. The sound of that pilot's breathing, the way his words rushed and stumbled, she knew what that meant. She had heard that same panic in training flights, in real combat, in the seconds before a young pilot's mistakes turned deadly. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. The young man beside her frowned. "Hey, they told us to stay seated." Riley did not answer. She stepped into the aisle, steady and deliberate, as if every move had already been decided in her mind. One of the flight attendants intercepted her about halfway to the front, planting herself gently in Riley's path. Her tone was practiced, soothing. "Ma'am, I need you to return to your seat. We are experiencing some minor communication issues, but everything is under control." Riley held her gaze. There was no anger in her voice, just quiet certainty. "I used to fly with them." The attendant blinked. "Excuse me?" Riley reached into the pocket of her hoodie and pulled out the small piece of metal she almost never showed anyone. The dog tag with the golden wings caught the light, its edges worn smooth by years against a flight suit. She held it up, not to show off, but as a simple fact. "I used to fly with them," she repeated, "and that was not a minor issue." The attendant's eyes flicked to the wings, then back to Riley's face. Something shifted in her expression. She hesitated, torn between rules and instinct. Another burst of static bled into the cabin, louder this time, making a few children flinch. The young pilot's voice came again, thicker and more frantic. "I am losing trim, Falcon 2, losing it." Riley's eyes hardened. The attendant stepped aside. The walk to the front of the aircraft felt longer than it was. Passengers turned their heads as she passed, some annoyed, some curious, a few openly anxious. "Where is she going? She can't go up there, right? What is happening?" A mother in the middle rows pulled her small daughter closer, pressing a hand over the child's ear as if that could keep the fear out. Riley moved past all of them, each step measured. Her heart was beating faster now, but her hands were steady. The closer she got to the cockpit, the more she could feel the vibrating tension in the airframe. Tiny changes in the way the engine sounded told her the pilot was making adjustments he did not fully trust. When she reached the door, the forward flight attendant blocked her again, but this time the resistance was weaker. "Ma'am, I really cannot let you open the door," Riley said quietly, "or let the captain know he has an Army Air Combat Test pilot standing right here while his escorts are losing control." There was no arrogance in the way she said it. It was simply the truth. The attendant hesitated only a heartbeat before knocking sharply on the cockpit door and speaking into the interphone. A muffled conversation followed, tense and fast. Then the door opened a few inches, and the captain's face appeared, lined with stress. He looked Riley up and down, plainly not seeing a savior, just a tired woman in a hoodie. "Yes?" he asked, clipped. Riley held up the wings. "Captain Riley Hart, former Army Air Combat Test pilot, Joint Forces instructor. Your escort is in trouble." The captain's eyes dropped to the wings, then to her face again. Behind him, the co-pilot's cheeks were pale, his eyes locked on the instruments. "We have Air Force control handling this," the captain said. "We are told to maintain course, altitude, and calm." Another crash of radio interference spilled into the small space. The voice of the young pilot was clearer in here, unfiltered by the passenger speakers. "Falcon 2, nose drift left, overcorrecting, fuel warning, I cannot keep her off the wing." Riley leaned past the captain just enough to see through the front glass. The view outside hit her like a memory. Falcon 2 was too close. Far too close. The F-16 sat just off their wing in a position no escort should ever hold for long. The nose kept dipping and correcting, a seesaw motion that spelled disaster at this altitude and speed. The stabilizers were fighting him, the tail twitching in small, chaotic movements. She saw it all in a second. "He is overcorrecting," she said, her voice low. "His stabilizers are misaligned. He is trying to match your jet instead of holding his own line. You keep this up, and he will drift, clip a wing, or stall. You are a few mistakes away from losing that pilot. Or worse." The captain swallowed, following her gaze, but he did not have her eyes. To him, it looked like two jets holding a steady escort. To her, it looked like a man standing on one foot at the edge of a cliff. "Ma'am, I am sure the Air Force knows what it is doing," he said, but there was less confidence now. Riley did not raise her voice. "I trained that pilot. He is seconds from losing his jet." The co-pilot's head turned. "You trained him?" "Jake Mercer," Riley said. "Falcon 2. He always pushed the stick too hard when he got scared. I warned him that one day he would fight the jet instead of flying it." The captain stared at her, trying to decide whether to believe that this quiet woman in a civilian hoodie once taught the man flying the fighter right outside their window. Another long breath from Falcon 2 flooded the headset, loud and ragged. He sounded like he was breathing through clenched teeth. Passengers saw none of this up close, but they felt the tension spreading. A few people began to lean toward the windows, searching for the fighters. Some started filming on their phones, though they did not know exactly what they were watching. A small group near the middle began praying under their breath. A man in the back argued that this was all standard procedure and told everyone to relax, his voice just a little too loud and too forced. A woman hugged her toddler closer, eyes fixed on the fast-approaching clouds outside. What would you have done in that moment? Would you have stayed in your seat, pretending everything was fine? Or would you have walked forward like she did, knowing you might be wrong, knowing everyone would stare, but feeling in your bones that doing nothing was not an option? The captain finally stepped aside and motioned her into the cramped cockpit. The door closed behind her, sealing them away from the worried eyes and whispered questions. Inside, the space was tight and hot, lit by the glow of instruments and the pale blue-gray of the sky ahead. The co-pilot kept one hand on the controls and the other hovering near the radio panel. Riley slid into the jump seat behind them, pressing the wings into her palm like an anchor. "Do you have a spare headset?" she asked. The captain hesitated, then reached for one hanging to the side. He handed it back slowly, as if he was passing over something dangerous. Riley put it on, adjusting the mic into place. The world narrowed immediately to breathing, static, and clipped voices. "Falcon 2, your position is tight but stable. Maintain formation," came a calm voice from Air Force Command. Falcon 2 answered, but his control was slipping. "Fuel low, stick is shaking, I am trying to hold." Riley closed her eyes for half a second. She could almost see his cockpit, the way his hands would be clenched on the stick, knuckles white, his jaw locked. "Let me talk to him," she said. The captain looked back at her. "Who exactly are you to him?" Riley's answer was simple. "I am the one who used to sit in the jet next to his and stop him from killing himself," she said. "If you want him alive, let me do it one more time." The captain and co-pilot shared a glance. There was no training manual for this, no checklist for when a pilot who was supposed to be dead showed up in your cockpit and claimed the escort outside was her former student. Outside, the F-16 drifted a fraction of an inch closer to the wingtip. That was enough. The captain nodded once and pointed to the comm switch. Riley flipped it on, feeling the old weight of the headset settle around her shoulders. For a moment, the years fell away. She was not in a passenger jet. She was back in the sky, side by side with a kid who needed her voice more than anything. "Falcon 2, she said, her tone calm and steady, cutting through the chaos. "This is Eagle 1. Listen to me." In that instant, she began to take control of the sky again. And no one in the cabin beyond that door had any idea who she really was. Riley didn't rush her words. She didn't raise her voice. She just spoke with the calm precision of someone who had spent half her life strapped into a cockpit at 30,000 feet. Her tone changed the moment she keyed the mic, quiet, steady, clipped in the way only combat pilots ever sounded. "Falcon 2, ease your left stabilizer 2 degrees, she said. "Stop fighting the nose drift. Follow the A-10 shadow. Let the airflow settle for you." The cockpit fell silent. Even the captain stopped breathing for a second. Her instructions weren't guesses. They weren't suggestions. They were exact. The kind of exact that came from thousands of hours in the sky. Outside, the F-16 responded immediately. The nose steadied. The tail pitch smoothed. The tiny tremor along the wing disappeared like someone had flipped a switch. The captain stared at the windshield as if the jet had just obeyed her telepathically. The co-pilot whispered, "How did you?" Riley didn't answer. She didn't need to. She could hear everything the pilots were dealing with. The faint shift in the engine tone told her Falcon 2 had just backed off his throttle. The tiny vibration through the floor told her the escort formation was adjusting altitude. She didn't need to look to know where they were moving. Her voice stayed level. Not a trace of fear, only discipline. She keyed the mic again. "Falcon 2, hold that line, do not overcorrect. Let the A-10 guide your airflow. You are stable." Falcon 2's breathing came through the headset, shaky but slowing. "Yes, ma'am, stabilizing." Riley's hands trembled once, a small betrayal of everything she had tried to bury. She curled her fingers to hide it. The captain was looking at her like he was seeing her for the first time, not as a quiet woman in a hoodie, but as someone who spoke a language he didn't know existed. Behind the closed cockpit door, a few passengers were starting to whisper. They had noticed Riley walking up earlier. They had noticed the flight attendant's nervous glances. They could sense something unusual happening up front. When Riley spoke again, she sounded like she belonged in a control tower, not an economy seat. "Falcon 3, adjust your offset. You're drifting toward his right jet wash." The pilot responded instantly. "Copy that correction." Passengers couldn't hear those exact words, but they saw something odd through the windows. A few heads snapped up. A man pressed his forehead to the glass. "Did that fighter jet just move the moment she talked?" he whispered. A woman a few seats back murmured, "Why is she talking to them like that?" "Who is she?" Confusion spread in small ripples. Inside the cockpit, the radio crackled again. this time from higher above. A deeper voice, controlled but rattled, broke in. A-10 Thunder, lead on approach. Falcon 2, maintain your lane. I am overhead and descending. Riley's breath caught in her throat. That voice was familiar. Major Dana Briggs. Iron Thunder. One of the finest A-10 pilots she had ever flown with. The big thunderbolt swept overhead a moment later, its engines shaking the entire airplane. The captain flinched at the sheer presence of the aircraft passing above them. Then the A-10 pilot spoke again, slower this time, more careful. Control, identify that last transmission. Who corrected Falcon 2's stabilizer? The captain stiffened. He glanced back at Riley. No one answered immediately. Iron Thunder's voice came again, more suspicious now. That sounded, I need confirmation. That sounded like Eagle 1. The cockpit froze. The co-pilot swallowed. Who is Eagle 1? The captain didn't answer. His eyes slid toward Riley, searching her face for truth or denial. She kept her expression calm, almost blank, but her jaw tightened. The name hit her like a strike to the ribs. The years she had spent trying to disappear, all shaken loose by the sound of a pilot recognizing her voice. Passengers outside the cockpit heard only muffled radio chatter, but sensed a shift in energy. One man asked a flight attendant what was happening. She didn't know. She wasn't supposed to know. Inside Riley's backpack, beneath the seat where she had left it earlier, the edge of her worn dawn tag pressed faintly against the fabric. The tiny embedded chip dormant for years glowed to life with a quiet pulse, triggered by the secure frequency now active in the cockpit. She didn't need to see it to know. She felt it in her chest, a cold realization settling in. The systems she once helped build were waking up. Iron Thunder spoke again, his voice lower now, focused. Control, confirm. I know that voice. Is Eagle 1 on that aircraft? The captain stared at Riley. She stared at the sky. The clouds outside were bright and harmless, but something darker was coming behind them. Something she could feel before anyone else. A pressure in her bones. A rhythm she hadn't felt since the mission that ended everything. The storm wasn't around them yet, but it was building. And whoever had reactivated her dog tag signal wanted her to know it. The cockpit filled with a sudden, sharp burst of encrypted chatter. It wasn't the usual background noise of military frequencies. This was tighter, layered, coded something only high-level command used. The captain stiffened in his seat as the radio panel lit up with alerts. A clipped, metallic voice came through. Unidentified speaker, transmit identification. Voice print analysis indicates match with classified personnel. Repeat, identify yourself immediately. The captain turned slowly in his seat, staring at Riley as if he were seeing a ghost. They think you're someone named Eagle 1, he said. His voice wasn't accusing. It wasn't even questioning. It was frightened because he had heard the tone in the transmission. Whoever Eagle 1 was, command thought she shouldn't be alive. Riley didn't answer. She kept her eyes forward, jaw locked. She had spent 5 years learning how to breathe without reacting, how to shrink herself into the world of ordinary people. This was the one name she never wanted to hear again. Outside, the clouds thinned and sunlight hit the windshield just long enough for the pilots to notice new shapes emerging far off the nose. 3 of them. Stark, sharp. Wrong. Not like any jet the passengers would recognize. Not like anything the civilian captain had ever seen. Their movement was too fluid, too perfectly timed. They glided in tight formation, then shifted with inhuman precision. No drift, no lag, no hesitation. Falcon 3's voice broke through the radio, strained and urgent. Control, we have new contacts. 3 unknown aircraft approaching fast. No transponders, no flight data, no ID, moving impossibly clean. The captain leaned toward the glass as the shapes grew closer. Are those drones? He whispered. Riley's eyes narrowed. Drones didn't move like that. Drones didn't think like that. Thunder Lead came on next, his tone far more serious than before. "Those things are not here for the jet," he said. "They're not looking at us. They're tracking one signal." I repeat, one signal inside the commercial aircraft. The cockpit seemed to shrink. The co-pilot whispered, "Tracking inside?" Thunder-led continued, voice rising. "They're locking onto a specific frequency. Someone on that plane is broadcasting a dormant signature. Whoever they're after is in your cabin." The captain turned to Riley again. "Is that you?" Riley didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed on the three dark shapes closing in. They weren't military. They weren't foreign jets. They were too advanced to be anything in open service. But Riley recognized the way they flew, the sharp angles, the predictive arcs, the perfect formations, the logic behind their movement. She felt her stomach tighten. She knew these aircraft. Or rather, she knew the minds inside them. She closed her eyes for a breath, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet and almost pained. "They're mine," she whispered. Or, "They used to be." The captain stared at her, speechless. "You built those things?" he asked. "No," Riley said softly. "I built what they were based on. We called the program Shadow Storm." The co-pilot swallowed hard. "Classified?" "Very," she said. "Too advanced, too unpredictable. We shut it down. Or we thought we did." Outside, the three unknown aircraft tilted in eerie synchronization, like predators circling, adjusting their position with machine-level patience. Falcon 3 shouted over the radio again. "They're accelerating. They're locking onto the signal source, whatever's inside that plane." Passengers had no idea what was happening, but some began to sense the fear drifting from the cockpit door. A woman near the front asked a flight attendant if everything was okay. The attendant forced a smile she didn't feel. Inside the cockpit, it felt like the world had tilted. Riley finally looked at the captain. "You need to know this," she said quietly. "Shadow Storm was designed to learn from the best pilots we had. They watched how we flew. Thought like we thought, predicted what we would do. They were supposed to protect human pilots." She took a long, steady breath. "But someone changed their directive." The captain shook his head, unable to process it all. "Changed it to what?" Riley looked back out the windshield. "They're not protecting anyone now," she said. "They're hunting, and they're hunting the last voice their system remembers." Falcon 2's voice cracked across the radio again, higher and more desperate. "They're moving in fast, coming straight toward the airliner. Control, request immediate." Thunder-led cut him off. "No, they are not attacking the airliner. They are targeting one frequency, one signature." The cockpit dimmed as the three dark aircraft shifted position, their shadows sweeping across the commercial jet's windows. The captain asked the question he had been trying not to ask. "What frequency are they tracking?" Riley touched the pocket where her worn dog tag normally rested, the one she had left in her backpack below. "The one tied to my old flight systems," she said. "Someone reactivated it." The co-pilot's voice shook. "So they're coming for you?" Riley didn't answer. She didn't need to. The truth filled the cabin like cold air. The threat was not random. The danger was not aimed at the passengers. Shadow Storm was not malfunctioning. It was doing exactly what someone programmed it to do: find Eagle 1. And she was sitting in seat 8A of a crowded civilian jet. The storm had found her. The first warning came as a shudder through the fuselage, a quick, sharp tremble that made the captain grip the controls with both hands. A heartbeat later, the sky flashed white on the right side of the aircraft. Something had passed close. Too close. Falcon 2's voice cracked through the headset. "Contact just fired. Near miss, repeat, near miss." "I'm losing it." Riley leaned forward instinctively. Outside, Falcon 2's F-16 wobbled hard, its nose dipping in a dangerous arc. The pilot's breathing spiked through the radio, fast and uneven. He was seconds from a spin he might not recover from. Thunder-led came in hot from above, his A-10 rolling to shield the airliner. The big aircraft thundered past the cockpit window with a force that rattled every loose screw inside the cabin. A streak of something dark sliced across the A-10's left wing, another near hit. Thunder, lead taking fire, unknown units tracking again, he growled. The captain's knuckles went white on the controls. The co-pilot muttered a prayer under his breath. Then the radio lit up with a piercing tone, one Riley hadn't heard in 5 years. A secure line forcing its way onto the channel. A code she knew too well. A code only tied to missions she was supposed to have died on. A cold voice came through, clipped and official. Eagle Protocol. Identify yourself. Repeat, identify yourself on Channel Alpha. The captain turned to Riley slowly, his eyes wide. They're asking for Eagle 1 again, he whispered. Who carry you? Riley didn't move at first. The hum of the engines, the shaking floor, the frantic voices, it all pulled her back to a world she had tried desperately to leave behind. Falcon 2 cried out over the radio. I can't stabilize. Falcon 2 may go down. The secure tone buzzed again. Insistent, demanding. Riley exhaled once, long and quiet. Then she reached forward, pressed the transmission key with a steady finger, and finally spoke the words she had sworn never to say again. This is Captain Riley Hart, Eagle 1, alive and speaking. The cockpit went completely still, total silence on the radio. No static, no breathing. Just stunned quiet stretching across thousands of feet of sky. Even the civilian captain didn't speak. He stared at her as if she had come back from the dead. When the reply finally came, it was barely more than a whisper. Falcon 2's voice broke first. Ma'am, you're alive? Eagle 1? His tone wasn't scared anymore. It was something else, something like awe mixed with disbelief and a flood of old respect. Thunder Lead came in next, his voice tighter than Riley had ever heard it. You train half the pilots in this sky, he said. If anyone can shut this down, it's you. The captain turned in his seat, eyes locked on Riley. He didn't ask another question. He didn't have to. The way the military pilot spoke told him everything. The woman in the hoodie wasn't just someone with old wings. She wasn't just a former pilot. She was someone they thought had died for her country. Someone legends were built around. Someone the sky itself remembered. The reveal was no longer a mystery. No longer a secret she could hide. Eagle 1 was alive, and every pilot within miles knew it. The moment Riley's call sign hit the airwaves, the chaos outside shifted. The tension in every pilot's voice steadied, like the entire sky had taken a breath and recognized the leader it had been missing. Falcon 2, Riley said, calm and firm. Break 5 degrees right. Don't fight the turbulence. Let it guide you. Yes, ma'am, he answered instantly. No hesitation. No panic. Just obedience born from years of training she once drilled into him on scorching runways and night flight sims. She keyed the mic again. Falcon 3, widen your arc. Give Thunder Lead room to descend. Falcon 3 responded without question. Copy. Adjusting now. The fighters shifted around the airliner, moving in a formation so clean it made the civilian captain's breath catch. Riley didn't have a flight stick in her hand. She didn't need one. Her voice alone rearranged the sky. Thunder Lead's damaged A-10 tried to stabilize, wobbling as smoke dragged off its wing. Thunder Lead, pull under the belly of the commercial aircraft, Riley instructed. Shadow storm units will hesitate if their line of sight is blocked. Thunder Lead followed immediately. Understood, Eagle 1. Taking shelter. The big A-10 dipped beneath the jet, shielding it like a steel guardian. The unknown aircraft, her old program's offspring, shifted overhead, searching for angles, testing patterns. Their movement was too smooth, too coordinated. They weren't looking for targets. They were looking for her. Riley flipped through the radio channels until she reached a secure tone only she had ever used during the shadow storm tests. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to attempt. She reached into her pocket for the dawn tag she had pulled from her backpack moments earlier. The scratched golden wings glinted against the dim cockpit lights. A small chip embedded behind the metal, one no civilian would ever notice. activated with a faint pulse when she pressed the center. A frequency that had been silent for 5 years came alive. The air felt heavier. Even the captain sensed it. Riley lifted the tag to her mouth and transmitted on the old command channel. "Shadowstorm Network," she said quietly. "This is Eagle 1. Execute last directive." The drones slowed. Their formation broke slightly, though they kept circling. Riley continued, her voice steady, carrying the authority she once used to command experimental squadrons. "Protect all civilian lives at any cost," she said. "Override all secondary protocols. Recognize voice. Recognize code. Recognize command authority, Eagle 1. The cockpit went silent as the 3 dark aircraft froze mid-pattern. Falcon 3 whispered over the radio. "What are they doing?" "Thunder," Lead answered in a hushed breath. "They're listening to her." For a long moment, nothing moved. The hostile aircraft hovered like statues painted against the clouds. Then one of them dipped slightly, almost like a bow. A soft glow pulsed beneath its frame. A second followed. Then the third. Riley lowered the dawn tag, her eyes fixed outside. She knew what she had triggered. She knew the cost of those words. The drones began to peel away from the formation. They didn't dive aggressively or fire. They moved with eerie calm, drifting higher into the sunlight. Then, without warning, each one folded inward, a compact, controlled implosion. No explosion, no debris, just a sudden collapse into themselves like dying stars. Silent. Aim. Final. One after another, they vanished into the clouds. The sky went quiet. Truly quiet. Falcon 2's voice broke through first, softer than she had ever heard him. "Eagle 1, you saved us." Thunder Lead followed, and if Riley had closed her eyes, she could have sworn he sounded emotional. "Ma'am," he said, "it is an honor to fly with you again." The civilian captain slowly turned to look at Riley, his face pale, his mouth parted, but unable to form any words. In the cabin beyond the cockpit door, the passengers sat in confusion, unaware of how close they had come to becoming a headline. Some sensed something had happened, felt it in the tremble of the plane, the way the sun returned through the windows, as if the clouds had surrendered. They didn't know the sky had just been fought for. They didn't know a woman in a hoodie had stood between them and death. Riley rose from the jump seat, her expression returning to the quiet stillness she had worn when she first boarded. She handed the headset back to the captain, who accepted it with reverence. "You're really?" he began. Riley shook her head gently. "I'm just a passenger today, Captain." Then she stepped out of the cockpit, walking back down the aisle. Passengers glanced at her, sensing a shift they couldn't explain. They didn't cheer or clap. They didn't know. They only felt something had happened. Something big. And Riley Hart, Eagle 1, slipped back into seat 8A as if she'd never left it. The descent began smoother than anyone expected. After everything that had happened above the clouds, the cabin now felt strangely calm. The passengers clapped when the captain announced they would be landing at a military airfield for precautionary reasons. No one questioned it. They were just relieved to hear the landing gear dropping and see the runway growing larger through the windows. Outside, Thunderled's A-10 smoke trailing from its wounded wing took position on the left. Falcon 2 and Falcon 3 held formation on the right. They weren't just escorting the airliner, they were guarding it. Guarding her. To the people inside, it looked like simple protocol. To Riley, it looked like respect. The wheels touched down with a gentle jolt. Applause erupted down the cabin. A few passengers let out long, shaky breaths. Others hugged their kids, grateful just to be on solid ground. None of them knew how close they had come. As the aircraft rolled to a stop and the doors opened, a young flight attendant approached Riley with a trembling smile. I don't know what you did," she said softly, "but thank you." "I could feel it. Something changed when you went up there." Riley held her backpack straps lightly in her hands and gave a quiet answer. "Sometimes the strongest voices are the ones that stay silent." The flight attendant didn't fully understand, but she nodded as if she did. Riley walked down the steps at the rear of the aircraft, farther from the crowd of passengers moving out the front. The wind on the tarmac carried the smell of fuel, metal, and dust, familiar in a way that hit her deeper than she wanted to admit. Two military officers in crisp uniforms waited at the bottom. They didn't ask for her ID. They didn't question her appearance. They simply straightened to attention. "Ma'am," one of them said, voice steady, "welcome back." "Eagle One." For a moment, Riley didn't respond. She wasn't sure she wanted that name anymore. But the situation had demanded it, and now the world refused to forget it again. She gave a small nod and walked past them, her steps slow and even. That was when she saw it. Thunder Lead's A-10 was parked near the hangars, its left wing patched and smoking lightly. On its nose, just below the canopy, was the eagle she remembered. The paint faded, the lines cracked, but still proud. She walked closer, stopping just a few feet from the old warplane. For the first time in years, she let the weight of her past settle fully onto her shoulders. In the quiet between engine shutdowns, Riley whispered to the aircraft, to the sky, to the part of herself she had buried for so long, "Eagle One, signing off." No one else heard it. No one needed to. Some stories end not with fanfare, but with a single breath of acceptance. And the truth settled around her like the warm air of the runway. Courage is not the loudest person in the room. Sometimes it is the quiet one, carrying a past no one sees, stepping forward only when lives depend on it. There are heroes whose names the world forgets, and some who never wanted their names spoken in the first place. They carry their memories quietly, tucked into old dog tags and worn backpacks, living among us like ordinary people. They do not seek recognition. They do not ask for applause. But when the moment arrives, when lives hang in the balance, they step forward with the same steady courage that once carried them through war-torn skies and long, silent nights far from home. Riley Hart was one of them. A reminder that the strongest warriors are often the ones we walk past without noticing, the ones who carry their service inside their hearts rather than on their sleeves. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe for more military and veteran stories. These stories keep the courage alive for generations to come.